And welcome to the Coach's Corner, coming to you from the Sugar and Spice, the Shrine on Pine. And we are joined tonight by Broome head football coach Lynn Fleming. Well, Coach, you ran up against a very good football team, Woodruff there, and I think Woodruff probably is one of the best teams you played this year, though. But Centurions just played pretty well and just got behind the eight ball a little bit. A couple of big plays by Woodruff kind of changed your game plan, and you had to do some things different against them.
Yeah, Woodruff, very good football team and very well coached, and they just they did what they needed to do. It's just pretty much an old-fashioned whipping. So you tip your hat to them, and we got to find a way to get better, and we got to find a way to coach better, and so we just we're focusing on that this week and trying to have a short-term memory and get ready for Union County.
Well, you were, right there in the game. And again, the big receiver, I believe his name was Cam Taylor there, made one spectacular catch that I thought Asher was step for step with him on the coverage, and he just made a great catch. And, they converted a couple of long plays like that where they just made some big-time plays. And, you're still in it at the half, but probably the momentum changer was when they got the ball first in the second half and ran the kickoff back.
Yeah, that's kind of kind of deflates you a little bit. We felt like we still had a good game plan. It was 28-14 at the time, and we when he runs the kickoff back, it's it's tough. And then you go to 14 points, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, and but our guys fought, and we just continue to try to get better at what we can get better at on last Friday.
While I'm at it, I want to get this plug this is really me. I'm alive. I know there were some reports that I had passed away in my Facebook page. You can go to Facebook, and it explains why there for a while there was no such thing as my Facebook page, that it was kind of a big mess, though. But I'm happy to be back. I feel pretty good right now, though, and I think I'm alive, though. So
you look alive.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. I mean, I could say something about one of my partners, but I won't say anything right there, though. All right. You mentioned after the game that when it got to be a little bit lopsided, you would have liked to have gotten some of your players out of the game. I know you got Booker out of the game, not having a chance of getting hurt, but you also got a couple of players banged up on that too that you couldn't take out of the game. And you were talking about the 8-quarter rule. Can you explain that and what you would like to see that rule come back into effect for kind of what we were going through on Friday night?
Well, the 8-quarter rule is just it's a development rule. Really, I mean, it allowed us to play some guys on Thursday night. In a with very minimal snaps, and allowed them to play Friday as well, allowed them to dress. So if you had a game that it got out of hand either way, you could put those guys in and allow them to get some reps, allow them to play special teams. You kind of in a situation now, and I give you an example. Our JV team, Corley, who played for us, who's injured, but he could have been our JV quarterback on Thursday night, and he could turn around and play one side of the ball on Friday, and still would have been less snaps than he had played, because he'd probably been a two-way player for us on Friday night. I think some the rule got abused by some people, and I think that was why that it kind of disappeared and went away. But we need to work towards getting something back in place where we can get some of those guys on Friday night, because you're limited. You get up or you get down, and you want to get guys off the field, and it's just hard to do that. And you want to get them off so they don't get hurt, but you also want to get them off so some other guys can play. So you can get those guys ready because that's your future. And so I hope in the near future we can come up with something that would continue to help, because I really think South Carolina high school football was in its best when we were using the 8-quarter rule, and development was so much better with our guys, with our players.
What would it take to actually to try to bring back that rule? Because I mean, it's kind of tough when the situation y'all are in, that you don't have that big of a roster. You're limited numbers. You've got a lot of players, that are having to play pretty much every snap or close to it there. If you could, though, with the kicking game, everything there, though. And then you've got some people, that wouldn't need them right here that got, 60, 70 players on a roster there. But, they need to do something to help the small schools in a smaller roster capacity.
Yeah, well, even having a backup quarterback, you take a young man that's you want him to get developed, you want him to play on Thursdays. Now you got to make a choice whether you play him on Thursday or you set him on the bench for Friday just to be a backup. Just in case scenario. And it's not fair to the kid, and it's tough on coaches and trying to figure out that on Friday night. Does this kid lose 4 quarters of playing football versus a what if situation on a Friday night? And that all comes from the league. There've been some discussion with the medical board trying to get some of this back in play, and but that's just going to have to be approved through the high school league and something that's sanctioned from them.
Well, hopefully, maybe that's during the off season. That's something they will strongly look into, or that will be brought up again at the meetings and all.
Yeah, well, we hope so.
Okay, all right. Got week 2 coming up now, and the conference season. You've got Union County, and this is a team that year in and year out has great athletes. They don't have. Sometimes they don't really have the record, but you can count on that they're going to have some of the best athletes around right now. And I believe they come into this game. They hadn't had a whole lot of luck. That they did get a big win over Blacksburg early in the year. I think it was something like 49-7 though. But over their last 3 or 4 games, they've given up like 175 points on defense right there though. So what do you see in watching the films on Union County?
Well, it's kind of what you said. They're very athletic. Very aggressive on defense. We're going to see a 3-3, 3-4. Trying to bring pressure, trying to make things happen. Pretty good in the box. Offensively, they got a quarterback that's very mobile. He runs well, and we have to do a really good job of containing him and just trying to keep him in the pocket and not letting him get to the edge and space, because he's pretty good in space.
Now, last year, they only threw the ball 3 times the whole game. Are they looking to throw more this year? It looked like last year the quarterback was their main. Him and one running back, that they were the only 2 guys that really handled the ball the whole night.
Yeah, they're more of a traditional spread offense now, and that's what we've seen on film, and going into the game, what we're expecting to see. Of course, we're going to prepare for a little bit of everything in some sort of heavy set, since they had such success with it last year, and but I think they with the quarterback they have, he's more of a spread. He's more of a guy they want, like I said, they want to get in space. So I think that's what they think their strength is, and what I think this will be in Friday.
Okay, but knowing them, they can do anything.
Yeah.
As we saw last year with that, though. All right, defensively, I talked a little bit about their defense. Seemed to have been struggling a little bit in some of the games they played here recently, though. What are you seeing them trying to do on defense?
Just trying to force negative plays. That's the biggest thing. Is sometimes doing that, get yourselves out of position a little bit, and some teams have done a good job of taking advantage of that. And, but they're definitely not as bad as a record. And they still have really good players, and so we're gonna have to play really well, for 4 quarters. We go over there last year, we jump up on them, 14, come back, and we had to fight tooth and nail to get in overtime with them, and wind up losing in overtime. So every time these 2 teams step on the field, it seems like Broome. It seems like we're a rivalry with everybody. So it's like we get everybody's best shot, and I think that's gonna be the case Friday night.
Well, the last year's game, I don't think they had a kicker. I think they went for 2 about every time, if I remember correctly on that. What special teams wise, how do they look?
Yeah, it's kind of the same. I think they're primarily going for 2, and kicking off, they kind of spread the ball all over the field on kickoff. So it's really hard to kind of gauge what they're going to do.
Okay. Well, we're here tonight too to honor our players of the week. Our offensive player was Jordan Ramirez, and I know you were glad to get him back. That he's been wearing a boot on the sidelines for about the last 4 or 5 weeks. But just talk a little bit about his performance on Friday night.
Well, Jordan's a guy we're excited about coming into the year. You know, he didn't play last year, and we were glad to get him back out this year. And you know, he's a very talented player. You know, he's a good basketball player, good baseball player, good golfer. You know, he can just do a little bit of everything. And so we were glad to get him back out. And you know, he's working back in, and you know, trying to keep him healthy, and just trying to learn. You know, trying to learn the game a little bit as far as his plays and everything. So, you know, he did a great job with his Friday. Had a few catches, but you know what he did Friday was a lot of effort. You know, he did a really good job blocking for us. You know, spraying a couple big plays for us, and you know you know you can always count on him going 100 miles an hour. So he's only going to continue to get better, and you know he's going to working into being a big part of our offense.
And that's one thing you mentioned, their blocking. I think that I've noticed is that Coach Sullivan's done a really good job, that all of your receivers, you know, I've seen Asher throw some blocks that got on the screen that went for touchdowns, and Reese, same things there, but your receivers have done a real good job of when they aren't catching the ball, blocking for others.
Yeah, they're getting better and better.
All right, defensive player of the week was Nick Morgan here, and I've been asking him all season long, when are you going to come here and eat on me? So he's got his chicken tenders over there, and he said he wanted to, that he was trying. So glad that he's been able, because he's come and supported his teammates, and so that his day came here though. So just talk a little bit about his performance Friday night.
Nick played really well. You know, the one thing about Nick is he's continued to he's getting better at being consistent. You know, I think he had 11 tackles Friday, which was a team high. And you know, the thing about Nick is he's just smart. You know, he really understands how to get himself in position, and and he did a great job Friday of making those plays. So you know, he's another one that's I think is only going to get better and better. Every time he goes out. Both these guys are juniors, so we got him back for another year. So we're excited about where he's at and how much better he's getting.
And the big thing too that I can remember several times this year, Powdersville and all, where he's come up with a big play in a game,
absolutely.
maybe every game or something like that. He's getting at least one big play, really, that we mentioned and call him out for, though.
Absolutely.
So it's glad that you mentioned that he's been able to string together a series of good plays on defense.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Game with Union County here going down. I don't think it's fair week down there yet, so that I don't think we'll have to contend with the fair. I think that comes next week for them there. But just talk about what you think are the keys to the football game with Union County.
Yeah, well, offensively, again, we just have to control the line of scrimmage. I told you last week, we were going to have to run the football, and we couldn't. We didn't do a very good job there, and we're going to have to do a better job. I think the key for us is still run the football. I think we have to run the football to open up our passing game, and and kind of vice versa. But I think that's key for us offensively. We have to be able to win up front and run the football. Defensively, contain the quarterback. We just got to make sure that he doesn't chip off some big plays. They got some playmakers. He does a good job of getting out in space and then dumping it out to some of his receivers who are also good athletes. And so, we just got to make sure we contain him and not allow him to beat us.
Okay, and let's see. The next thing it was kind of a physical game Friday night. Health-wise, how do you stand going into the game this coming Friday?
Yeah, we're about as healthy as we're going to be. We're we got some guys that are beat up a little bit. And they're playing with some soreness and everything. They're just fighting and playing through it. So, it's a tough group, and they're playing hard every week, and it's been some physical practices. Just trying to continue to get better as well. You put those together, and you're just gonna have some guys beat up. Hopefully we can we get through this week, and we have a week off, and hopefully a little bit of time to heal up.
And that will be good. And I know you've got something big going on during the off week right here that you shared with me earlier. There, a little trip you're going to be taking.
Yeah, it's pretty neat experience, and one of the kind of a lifetime. My wife's brother, who lives up in Michigan, he's neighbor with a gentleman that has Notre Dame season tickets. So he got us a few tickets to go up, and we're flying up and watching Notre Dame and Southern Cal play.
Wow.
In South Bend. So it's one of your bucket list things.
It
you
is.
check off, say you've been there and seen it. So we're excited about that trip, and we'll fly up on a Friday and come back on a Sunday. It'll be a quick trip, but it'll be
Fun.
fun.
And
Yeah.
one that you'll always remember. While you're there, make sure you tell Rudy I said hello.
Yep, we'll do it. We'll do it.
Well, we look forward to talking to you after the ball game. Good luck, and let's go down and get that first regional win on Friday night.
That's right. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.